Satan. The most central name for this being is Satan, a Hebrew word meaning adversary. The Bible first introduces him in this role in Job, where Satan appears among the heavenly beings and challenges Job's integrity, as seen in Job 1:6-12. The name itself describes his core identity, the one who stands against, opposes, and resists. In Zechariah 3:1, Satan is shown accusing the high priest Joshua, standing at his right hand to oppose him. When Jesus confronts him in the wilderness, he calls him Satan, as written in Matthew 4:10, reinforcing that this title is not merely descriptive, it is personal. Satan is the adversary of God's purposes, God's people, and God's truth from beginning to end. The devil. The New Testament shifts to Greek, and the word devil emerges coming from diabolos, meaning slanderer or one who throws accusations. In Matthew 4:1, it is the devil who tempts Jesus in the wilderness, and 1 Peter 5:8 warns believers that your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion. The term highlights not only evil opposition, but the destructive power of lies, manipulation, and twisted truth. Whenever Scripture uses the devil, it emphasizes the character of one who attacks integrity through deception. The accuser. In Revelation 12:10, John calls him the accuser of our brothers and sisters, describing how he accuses them before God day and night. This title does not simply describe courtroom language. It reveals the spiritual strategy Satan uses against humanity. From the accusation against Job to the accusations against Joshua the high priest, his pattern is consistent. Satan seeks to condemn, shame, highlight guilt, and tear down confidence. His accusations aim not only to point out sin, but to weaponize it. Scripture shows God's response: rebuke, redemption, and restoration. The tempter. Another clear biblical title is the tempter, which appears in Matthew 4:3 when Jesus faces temptation in the wilderness. Paul also refers to him this way in 1 Thessalonians 3:5, recognizing a force that actively tries to lure people into sin. The tempter emphasizes his method, appealing to weakness, desire, pride, and fear. This title reveals that Satan rarely forces evil. Instead, he presents it attractively, subtly, or strategically. The danger is not only the temptation itself, but the long-term impact of small spiritual compromises. The evil one. Jesus calls him the evil one in the Lord's Prayer when he teaches his followers to pray for deliverance, as seen in Matthew 6:13. This title is echoed in John 17:15 and 1 John 5:19. It is not evil as an abstract force, it is the evil one, a personal source of evil. Scripture frames him as the root behind lies, temptation, corruption, and spiritual darkness. The title shows that evil is more than wrong behavior. It is a force intentionally pushing human beings away from God's light. The deceiver. Revelation 20:10 calls him the deceiver, and Revelation 12:9 says, he leads the whole world astray. This title describes his global influence, not limited to individuals or small groups, but shaping entire cultures, religions, systems, and ideologies. His deception includes false promises, distorted truth, spiritual confusion, seductive lies, and counterfeit forms of light. When Paul warns in 2 Corinthians 11:14 that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light, he reveals how subtle deception can be. His lies often come disguised as wisdom, enlightenment, or spiritual experience. The father of lies. In John 8:44, Jesus labels Satan the father of lies, saying, there is no truth in him. This title goes deeper than deception. It describes origin. Lies do not merely come from Satan, lies begin with him. Every falsehood in history traces back to this spiritual source. When Jesus confronts the religious leaders, he makes the conflict clear. Truth belongs to God, but lies belong to the devil. This title reveals that dishonesty is not just a moral failure, but a spiritual alignment with the enemy of truth, the god of this world. Paul describes Satan as the god of this world in 2 Corinthians 4:4, explaining that he blinds the minds of unbelievers. This does not mean he is divine. Rather, it means the world's values, desires, systems, and corruptions often reflect his influence. This title shows the temporary, distorted reign he holds over fallen humanity. He shapes cultures, blinds perception, and influences thought. It explains why many resist the gospel, not just intellectually, but spiritually. The prince of this world. Jesus refers to Satan as the prince of this world in John 12:31, again in John 14:30, and in John 16:11. This title highlights his authority over broken systems and the spiritual atmosphere of rebellion. His influence is real, but it is temporary. Each time Jesus uses the title, he also declares that the prince of this world will be cast out, judged, or defeated. The name emphasizes both power and its coming end. The prince of the power of the air. Paul adds another title in Ephesians 2:2, describing Satan as the prince of the power of the air, ruling over the spirit now at work in the sons of disobedience. This title gives insight into spiritual warfare. Air symbolizes the unseen realm, thoughts, attitudes, influences, and spiritual currents that affect human behavior. It reflects the invisible but powerful nature of his operations. The ruler of darkness. In Ephesians 6:12, Paul describes the forces of evil as the rulers of the darkness of this world, pointing to Satan as the leader of that dark kingdom. This title suggests organization, hierarchy, and strategy. It implies that spiritual darkness is not chaotic, but led by a ruler whose intention is to oppose everything aligned with God's light, truth, and holiness. The dragon. In Revelation 12:3-9, Satan appears symbolically as the great red dragon, a monstrous image representing power, violence, rage, and destruction. The dragon symbolizes a cosmic enemy, one who wages war not only on the saints but on heaven itself. The dragon imagery stretches from ancient myths to biblical apocalyptic literature, but Revelation uses it to show that spiritual warfare is real, fierce, and global. This title conveys terror, brutality, and supernatural hostility. The ancient serpent. Revelation 12:9 and 22 explicitly connect the dragon with that ancient serpent. This title reaches back to Genesis 3, where the serpent deceives Eve, bringing sin into the world. While Genesis does not call the serpent Satan, later scripture makes the identity unmistakable. The title Ancient Serpent links the beginning of humanity's fall to the same adversary who appears in the end times. It reminds readers that the enemy's oldest tactic, deception, remains active. The serpent. Paul warns in 2 Corinthians 11:3 that the serpent deceived Eve through cunning, using the serpent image to show Satan's subtlety and craftiness. The title captures slyness, hidden danger, and intellectual manipulation rather than brute force. The serpent is not loud, it is persuasive. This image warns believers that spiritual danger often comes quietly. Beelzebub. In Matthew 12:24, the Pharisees accuse Jesus of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. This name, originally linked to a Philistine deity, became associated with demonic authority. By Jesus' time, Beelzebub symbolized the highest demonic power, another name for Satan himself. When Jesus responds, he makes it clear that a divided kingdom cannot stand, revealing the unity of Satan's kingdom. The title highlights that he rules demonic forces. Belial. In 2 Corinthians 6:15, Paul contrasts Christ with Belial, a name meaning worthlessness or lawlessness. While originally used to describe corrupt people in the Old Testament, later Jewish writings used Belial as a proper name for the leader of evil spirits. Paul uses it in that sense, setting Belial opposite Christ. The title emphasizes moral corruption and total rebellion. The enemy. Jesus uses this simple but powerful title in his parable of the weeds, saying, "The enemy who sowed them is the devil," found in Matthew 13:39. The word enemy captures hostility, but not merely in personal terms. It is spiritual hostility. Satan is the enemy of truth, purity, unity, and growth. This title shows that spiritual resistance is intentional and directed. The strong man. In Mark 3:27, Jesus uses a short parable to describe binding the strong man before plundering his house. The strong man represents Satan, an enemy with real strength, guarding what he believes he owns. But Jesus teaches that he is stronger. This title reflects Satan's power, but also hints at Christ's superior authority. Lucifer. In Isaiah 14:12, the Hebrew term Helel ben Shahar, shining one, son of dawn, appears in a taunt against the king of Babylon. Later Christian tradition connected this passage to Satan's fall, and the Latin translation rendered the name as Lucifer. While the original context addresses human pride, many Christians see in it a parallel to Satan's rebellion. The name Lucifer expresses brilliance corrupted by arrogance. The king of Tyre. Ezekiel 28 describes the king of Tyre with imagery that many believe also applies symbolically to Satan, full of wisdom, perfect in beauty, and present on the holy mountain of God, until pride corrupted him. Though not a direct name for Satan, Christian interpretation often sees a dual meaning. This title paints a picture of a being exalted, gifted, and high-ranking who fell through pride. The destroyer. Jesus explains in John 10:10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, revealing another functional title often used in Christian teaching, It captures his mission: destruction of life, purpose, truth, and spiritual vitality. While not a formal name, Scripture firmly links this destructive work to Satan's agenda. The adversary of souls. Peter's warning in 1 Peter 5:8, "Your adversary," becomes the basis for this title. Though not a direct quote from Scripture, it summarizes his role across the entire biblical story. He opposes the soul, truth, righteousness, and salvation. The adversary does not merely resist, he hunts. Leviathan. Some Christian traditions connect Satan with Leviathan, the twisting chaos serpent described in Isaiah 27:1 as the fleeing serpent and torturing serpent that God will ultimately punish. In the Old Testament, Leviathan symbolizes unstoppable chaos, destruction, and monstrous rebellion against God's order. While the Bible never directly calls Leviathan Satan, later Jewish and Christian interpreters saw this creature as a symbol of the same ancient power of deception described in Genesis 3 and later named in Revelation 12:9. The language of a great serpent, a chaos monster resisting God, and an enemy defeated in the end times allowed Leviathan to become a poetic image of Satan's nature: powerful, hostile, and destined for final judgment. Azazel. The name Azazel or Azazel appears in Leviticus 16:8-10 during the Day of Atonement ritual. Israel is commanded to choose 2 goats, one for the Lord and one for Azazel. In Jewish tradition, Azazel becomes the name of a rebellious fallen being associated with wilderness, exile, impurity, and corruption. Later writings like 1 Enoch portray Azazel as a leader of fallen angels who teaches humanity violence, forbidden knowledge, and destructive practices. While the Bible does not explicitly identify Azazel as Satan, many early Christian and Jewish interpreters connected the two figures because both represent a corrupting spiritual force cast away from God's presence. In later Christian thought, Azazel becomes another name associated with the satanic rebellion, an enemy linked to sin, exile, and moral corruption.